in the middle of our stuff.
What have you done?
And let's just say I sent a very sensitive message to a wrong person.
Oh, I was going to laugh then. I shouldn't really. No.
Done that a lot.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot. It's not fun.
Okay.
No.
Hey, Virginia.
Hi, Virginia.
She's muted.
Michael Stacy. Yo. Hey, Michael. Hey, Bob. Hey, Neil. Hey, John and Debbie. Hey, Yvonne. Hey, Jeb. Jeb's there. Virginia. It's Virginia. It's her. Hey, I like your hair. Look at her hair.
I did it. Okay.
Did you?
I sent you something in case you wanted about the 8 psychological steps that take for mind control and brainwashing.
When did you do that? Just you just now.
Minutes
Okay.
Go to your email.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, Larissa's
Great.
coming in.
Yeah, Larissa knows me.
Great.
I
Oh, I
haven't
know
seen
Larissa.
Larissa in a
I
while.
went
Hey,
to
Michael
first meeting.
Stacy.
Michael Stacy.
Hey,
Larissa. It's
Hi,
Larissa.
Debbie. Job.
Hey, Kerry
Hello,
B.
everybody.
Marco.
Sonny.
Hey, Dave.
How was the injection, man?
Jody.
No, that was for my wife. I wasn't brave enough.
Oh, wow. You weren't brave enough. Jeez. I'm going for mine tomorrow on Sunday. I
Hi.
can't wait. Hey, Larissa.
Hey, David.
And I'm
Hey,
glad
how
I
you doing?
got
Good
my
to see you.
timing right for today. I
Yeah.
joined in so late last time.
Yeah. The clocks have almost settled back. I think it's the Aussies are next. They fall back. Aussies and Kiwis, and then the world is time
Oh,
is.
really? I thought US was the only one that moved clocks around in the world.
No.
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 No. There are other countries outside the US, just so you know.
Just
No,
not
no,
as
it's hard
big.
to believe, but there are.
Just
Yeah,
not as big. And
Yeah.
of course, Texas is
it's
bigger than
the
US.
globe is like a globe, you know. Yeah.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Deb.
Hey, Virginia.
So
Hey,
glad
Margot.
I have a
Good
free
to see you,
thinker
Margot.
here. Yes. Good day.
G'day. Nice. Hello, everyone. Is Jeb there yet? Is Jeb? We seen Jeb?
Jeb's in.
Oh,
Jeb's
Jeb's
right
here.
in the middle of my screen.
Is he? Hey, Jeb.
Oh yes, I'm here.
How you doing?
Virginia.
Can't stay away.
Oh wow. You full of the joys of spring, are you?
Yeah,
Great. Good.
I'm internet and Zoom dependent. I've
Oh,
decided
yeah. That's good. There should be a fellowship for that. What do
it's
you
a
think?
good dependency.
Yeah.
Keep me connected.
That's good. Well, it's good to have you here, mate. It's always good to have you here. Thanks for coming along. So yeah, good.
It's one that increases the connection, not decreases the connection.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh, there you go,
Ooh.
Margot.
Wow. Hey,
Physical
Julie.
physical distancing doesn't mean social distancing. We found that out.
Yeah, we did. Big time. So hopefully you guys have some good questions you want to ask me.
Hey, John.
John. Jeez.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing, mate?
Hey, John.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey,
Good.
John.
Good. Good to see you. Oh, John the camera. Watch out. Royalty. Here we go.
Where? Oh.
He's coming in.
Ooh, I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
honored. Wow.
Oh my Lord, it's John the camera.
Hi, John.
Mind your language. Yeah. You're gonna have to unmute there, John.
Hello, Dave. How are you? Hi,
How are you,
Jackie.
John?
Hi, I'm very well. I haven't seen you in hours.
I know, it's been amazing. How's that lawn? Has it grown any since I
Oh
saw
my God, what a great gardener you are. You're going to become my gardener.
Mate,
Yes.
I'm like that. What's that? Did you ever see that Peter Sellers film, Being There? The guy I was,
Yes.
Clancy the
yeah.
gardener. Yes.
You okay? Yeah, that's you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's me. A simple gardener. That's all I want to be. Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm John from Belfast. It's great to be here.
Hello, John.
John, you are amazing. I listened to your interview. It was so touching. Oh,
you so
Yeah,
much. That's kind of
someday,
you.
I hope someday to meet you in person when I get to
Oh,
come over.
Well, likewise. I hope the
Hey,
same.
Fiona.
Hope so. Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking? We should organize. I was saying to Dave, but maybe Dave could organize it. One big convention somewhere warm, by a beach, where we could all meet up.
California sounds good. Let's go there.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We're ready.
Hey, we've got a big beach right outside my house. Come on over.
And we're staying at
Yeah,
Marty's. Great. We'll just pitch a
yeah.
few tents. Wonderful.
Yeah. It
Hey,
only has
Chris.
to
Hey,
be-
Joe P. Hey, Yvonne. Hey, Colin. Hey, Kathy. Hey, Bruce. Tracy. Donna, if Donna's back. Hey, Donna.
Chris, oh
Good to
my
see you.
gosh.
Gary.
Chris, so good to
Camilla.
That sounds
Maureen.
like Romper Room.
Yes.
Hello, Virginia.
Good
Hello.
Chris is one of my fantastic artist painting peeps. So,
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah,
yay.
yeah, I'm so happy.
Nice to meet you, Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Thank you. There's Ian.
That's Christine. Oh,
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Christine.
found umbrella. That's a good. Must be raining. Here we go.
There's Dale.
Yeah, there's Dale. Here we go.
Oh, I was swimming this afternoon in the sea in Belfast. It was very
Isn't it
cold.
cold?
Hey, mate, I thought you're supposed to get sane when you got sober. What you doing?
I know. Well, I was wearing a wetsuit now, I must
Oh,
say.
well, that's almost sane. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Martin. Lovely to see you again.
Hey, Ian. Hey, Dale. Hey, Sonia.
Hey,
Hey,
Sonia.
Maureen. Oh, Sonia. Wow, I know her. Yes.
I know, I got it now.
Hello. Wow. More royalty. This is great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Hey, David. Just a couple more minutes.
Hi, David.
Hey, Found Umbrella. That's a good name. I'm liking that. Found Umbrella. Can I just ask you why it's Found Umbrella? I'm going to ask you to unmute. I hope you're not a troll. You just tell us why.
Hi, I'm an alcoholic. My problem is me.
Yeah.
I'm found, and I brought an umbrella. I'm so excited to hear this. Thanks,
Oh,
God,
wow.
for being here, for your service.
Well, it's good to have you here. It's good to have you.
Oh.
I'm just going to ask everyone to mute themselves before we start recording, if you wouldn't mind, please. So can you all mute except for Virginia? That would be great. You're doing me a big favor.
I think she found the umbrella because here it's down with the weather.
Ah, you see. There you go. Well done, Sonny. Right. Okay. So I'm going to start recording in 2 ticks. Is everyone muted? That would be awesome. And we're going to start recording now. Hello and welcome to another Zoom meeting and podcast of Here's Tom with the Weather, where we investigate the plethora of higher powers that populate the vast universe of 12-step recovery, where alcoholics riff out on step 3 and step 11, as prescribed by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, who encourage us to find some kind of higher power as long as it's not us. We speak to people with all manner of higher powers, from those who are atheists, Sufis, agnostics, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, followers of Islam, Hermetics, paganists, non-duality. We do the lot. We leave no stone unturned. It's our aim to promote understanding and open-mindedness so that alcoholics and addicts can find a higher power of their own to stay sober and carry the message. We promote tolerance and empathy for folks who have different spiritual practices than us. It's all about live and let live. And please remember that this is not an AA meeting. Just to be really clear, it's not an AA meeting. It's just an examination of some people's version or their story and their version of the truth, whatever that may be. And sometimes we speak to people not necessarily in recovery. We talk to seekers, we speak to gurus, and we speak to people in recovery who have a fantastic story. And that's what's happening today. We're going to speak to Virginia Partain, aka Hippie Cat Lover. And this lady has had one hell of a ride, let me tell you. She is, without a doubt, a survivor and a fighter. Virginia was born in San Francisco and is a genuine bona fide hippie who was at the heart of the whole counterculture revolution of the 1960s. She was and is the epitome of the Earth Mother. She is flower power personified. As a spiritual seeker, she has lived in communes and teepees, read all the books and followed the gurus. But then, in 1976, searching for meaning and I'm assuming some kind of spiritual enlightenment, and unafraid to try anything, she was introduced to the cult of the Moonies. That is, she fell under the spell of the infamous Reverend Moon and his teachings. Virginia spent 2 years in the cult before escaping and undergoing deprogramming. And she's then spent the following 10 years traveling around the world, helping others to be deprogrammed from various cults, including the Moonies. And since then, she got sober with 12-step fellowship or 12-step program in 1987. She's been a psychiatric nurse before becoming a multi-award-winning school teacher in California. And it's also worth mentioning that she is a survivor of the deadly Paradise fires in 2018. She's also a talented painter, and I'm also very proud to say that she is a friend of mine. Virginia, there's an introduction. How are you today?
Wow, really good. That's kind of overwhelming introduction, but thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. So first of all, we have spoke about this topic, and as soon as you told me about it, I said, we've got to get you on this. We've got to get you on the podcast. What is a cult? And let's just start at what is a cult? Now, we've all come here because you're a former cult member and you've been through it. Can you just tell us what a cult is, please?
So when I'm using the definition of a cult, I'm specifically talking about a group that has used brainwashing, mind control, as outlined by Robert J. Lifton when he did studies on brainwashing and mind control. And they follow those tenets, those 8 tenets, and they often will isolate their members. They have a leader who they believe is God personified. Reverend Moon for us was the Lord of the Second Advent, Jesus Christ returned to earth, who ultimately have whether or not we live or die, like they have total control to decide whether we take our lives or take others' lives. So that's when I'm defining a mind control cult. My cult was a religious cult. It was based off of a bastardization of the Bible. They used elements of it to in the teachings and in the mind control. But Moon created his own sacred text, and that sacred text was called the Divine Principle. And so that was our sacred text. And in mind control, when you have that sacred text, it becomes more important than even the human beings who are living under it. So,
okay. So you sent me something by Robert J. Lifton, and just say he outlines the 8 criteria for mind control brainwashing in his book, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. And these are milieu control, mystical manipulation, demands for purity, confession, sacred science, loading the language, doctrine over person, and dispensing of existence. Now, Virginia, we've known each other for quite a few months. You've been part of the whole Zoom and COVID recovery era for me. We've been friends for a while. We've been mates for a while, and you strike me as being an extremely intelligent person who is very loving and giving. And obviously, maybe back in the 70s or in the 60s and 70s, you weren't quite the person you are today. But how does somebody like yourself get involved in a cult like this? And can you just tell us what happened? Just what was the day that led up to this? You were a seeker. How did you get involved with this cult? Can you tell us how you were recruited or you enlisted?
Yeah, easy. I was going to Sonoma State University at the time, which was known as the spiritual university of the California universities. It was the place, if you wanted to seek, you went to that university. And I was in an alternative program within the campus. It wasn't a traditional college program. And so I was taking a seminar in love, and we were exploring what love was. And that included all kinds of strange things that we looked at and did. And so it wasn't and I was getting college credit for it, just saying. And so I had decided, it was before the day of computers, I was going to take photographs of love, what I envisioned love, and put it to music. So a slideshow to music. Wow, that was novel back in that day. And so I went to San Francisco taking pictures of love. And I met these 2 gentlemen in Golden Gate Park as I was taking my pictures. And they asked me, which is typical, They come up and they approach you and they ask you something. So we were trained how to approach people. So they asked me what magazine company I worked for, because I had the camera and stuff. And so I immediately was like, oh, no, I'm not a professional. And they go, oh, wow, what are you doing? And within about 10 minutes, they knew that I wanted to become a teacher. They knew that I wanted to be in the Peace Corps. And funny thing, they told me they had a group that was a mini Peace Corps in San Francisco. And could I come over and have dinner with them that evening and learn all about it? And that they were looking for teachers. Now, let me tell you, it's called heavenly deception. It's okay to lie to people as long as you get them to join the group. We were told that. So the ultimate goal is the ends justify the means. That's typical cult thinking.
In the olden days, they used to call it Shanghai, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. And in Hare Krishna, they call it transcendental trickery. All of them have this same thing where you can lie to someone as long as you get them to join the.
Well, you've been muted. Sorry. Pick that up again. Sorry.
So it's the ends justifies the means. So as a result, later, you know, if you were a musician, we would tell you we're part of a musicians collective. If you were a nurse, I remember we had this one guy we were trying to get in, and we told him we had a medical clinic. We didn't have any of those things, but we justified it with someday we would, because the whole world would be under Moon's control and we would have everything. That was our justification.
And when did it become apparent to you that you were deceived, or were you totally away entranced by it by the time that happened?
At that moment, I was, oh my gosh, these people are my people. I need to go to dinner with them. Plus, I must say the gentleman that invited me was a musician and quite handsome, so it kind of worked that way. And so
there's the rub.
I went to go listen to the music, and he sang songs right to me, you know, the whole time. And what I noticed is their songs sounded like normal songs, but the words were slightly different. And I was like, why are they changing the words? I don't get this. Because they changed the words so that it's programming what they want you to believe.
Can you give us an example of that?
One is Elvis's song, "Wise men say only fools rush in, for I can't help falling in love with you." That's the real words. Ours was rising in love with you, because to fall in love was evil and satanic. To rise in love meant you were going towards the Messiah, towards Moon. So it was the changing. So they ultimately, their belief was the fall of mankind was sex, and it was Eve who caused it. So eventually I was told white American women were the cause of were of all evil. We were the worst because we thought we could have equal rights and all this stuff. They came after us heavy. So we were often demoted to the really like washing floors. Of course, if you were Korean, you had high elevation. So they had status in the group. So
for reference, I guess it's if everyone's read the book The Handmaid's Tale or the TV series, then we're talking, these are the people that took over America. It's similar to that then, yeah?
Yes, it's the same idea.
Wow. Okay.
So I go, they seem like a really nice group of people. Everybody gathered around me. At the time, my nickname was Pickles. I went by the name Pickles. So everybody who came in who was a group member were coming up and going, "Oh, Pickles, welcome." And everybody kept using my name. And that's a sales thing. You want to sell somebody something, you make them feel familiar with you. So, and they all gathered around me, and I noticed everybody gathered around me were members of the group. I was not allowed to sit with other new people. I was put with all members of the group. And I did not know, but I was eventually assigned somebody who shadowed me, and they stayed with me at all times. So anyway, they had this wonderful little introduction to the group. It was fabulous. And And they talked about the Sufi tale of the blind men holding different parts of the elephant, and they're ready to fight. But if they all, blindfolded men, if they all took off their blindfolds, they'd realize it was a whole elephant, not pieces of it. So they were like, the problem in the world is we all have a piece of the truth instead of the whole truth. And that if we just saw the whole truth, we could then all together have world peace and love and all that. And I went, oh yeah, oh, I believe that. And then they said, well, come up to our camp. We have this free weekend and you can come up and spend the weekend with us. And it's so much fun. And it's just like camp and it's great. And so they didn't give me a chance to make any decisions. They put me on a bus and they drove me up to the camp. Like I went from having a regular life to being driven up the camp. I never left the camp after that. Well, until I was.
This was in a matter of how many hours, days are we talking about that you were seduced?
One day, about 3 hours.
Wow.
And I have
amazing.
to tell you, where was I? I was in existential dilemma at that time. I knew what I wanted to become in life. I had these dreams, these goals, and I knew what I was lacking. And so I had this gap there, and I was seeking to understand and get that in perspective. What I didn't know is, as I stayed in the group, they continued to raise the bar on what I should seek, which was perfection, by the way, and how evil and terrible and horrible I was down here. Because anytime you had a physical need, like I'm tired, my feet hurt, I don't want to go and we work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, selling flowers and programming people and stuff, that I would get tired. And we were told if you were tired, you were evil, you were letting this thing come in. And so we would punish ourselves, but that comes later. Sorry, wasn't there yet.
Yep. I'm just sort of going back because it just seems like you mentioned before about the song, and I was really interested in that sort of insidious, subterranean kind of, what's the word? You know, that kind of, you're being seduced slowly, but there's a sort of there's an underlying way of it. Can you give us some more examples of how that worked?
It's loaded language. They're beginning to load the language. And so I have to tell you, those songs, and there were numerous songs that we did, they would then play after I left the group, and I would have this experience called floating, where I would like kind of almost get scared, feel like I was back in my cult state of mind. It was terrifying. And it took me a while to be able to learn to ground when that happened. But the loaded language came in many ways. We had these chants they taught us. We had this one chant that went, it was supposed to be the little train going up the hill. I think I can, I think I can. And then yes, and it went choo-choo-choo, 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 yay, yay, pow. And we would walk by each other on the streets when we were recruiting, and we just do a choo-choo pow. And it was like this little code, you know, we're getting them, you know, kind of thing. And then we had, so I'm going to go back to when they got me up to the camp. The first thing they did is they took, all the women went into a big, gigantic room, and we all had to share the room. My first weekend had 300 people in it, and there were about 100 women to about 200 men. We were all crammed, 100 women, into this double wide trailer room. We were stuck in there, crammed together. You couldn't move. I mean, you could hardly sleep. People were on both sides. They took our watches because they said, hey, you know, let go of everything. We want you to let go of what time it is. We want you to let go of your questions, your doubts, just experience it. And I'm like, yeah. I was so primed to be brainwashed. I was beyond primed. I was open-hearted. I believed that we had laws in this country, in America, that would protect us from people who would try and deceive us. You know, at 67 years, almost 67 years of age, I know that's not true anymore in my life, that we aren't protected. But I was naive. I had this idealistic thing that we could change the world and we just had to love each other. And here was a group of people who were going to change the world and we were going to love the world. So they put us, we came in. The one thing I did say, I have to tell you, we came across a gate and there were armed guards and I got concerned. I'm going into an armed camp. And I go, why do you have armed guards? I'm like freaking out. And Michael, the guy who got me in the group, said, oh, it's to keep out deer hunters. And I was like, cool. All right. I was vegetarian. That's awesome. Get rid of
How are they armed, Virginia? What were they carrying? Machine guns, pistols, what?
just regular rifles. It was, and the truth was, it was to keep out me later as a deprogrammer, somebody who was rescuing people out of the group. So that's why they did it. And so then they put us in our little area and we're sleeping. Like we slept, we got there probably 2 o'clock in the morning by the time the dinner was over and we got up to the camp. So that Saturday morning we got up. I probably had 3 to 4 hours of sleep. I was definitely sleep deprived and continued for the next 2 years, sleep deprived. When I got out of the group, I had sores all over my body. I was malnourished. I had all kinds of issues when I got out.
And was that sleep deprivation? Was that like, so how did they do that? Was that lights on? Did they play a lot of noise? Was it, how did they break that down for you?
Talking to you constantly. They had activities. We were in lectures about 16 hours a day. And so, and they were fun. I mean, some of them I was like, what the hell are they talking about? Okay, this sounds good, whatever. I could do a little exercise and brainwash you for a minute.
Go right ahead.
All right, so I want everybody to think about shopping. And so, David, will you say the word shop 5 times for me?
Shop, 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 shop.
Okay, now I want you to spell the word shop. S-H-O-P.
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 S-H-O-P. S-H-O-P. S-H-O-P. S-H-O-P.
Okay, now I want you to say it more enthusiastic because when you're a Mooney, you got to be enthusiastic.
S-H-O-P. 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 S-H-O-P.
And now say shop. Say shop 5 more times.
Shop, 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 shop.
When you come to a green light.
Shop, 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 shop.
What do you do when you come to a green light?
Stop.
No, it's a green light. You go.
Oh, go, 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 go. Oh, okay, good. Okay. Yeah.
Easy. I can get you.
I'm easy. I'd have been done. I just wanted, can I just ask you just quickly about the recruitment? Is they now when you started doing it to others, did they knew that you were a hippie or that you were a spiritual seeker? How do they identify you as a prime candidate?
I was young. I looked like I could be, I had that fresh look of, ooh, what's happening? So when I got done being brainwashed and I was recruiting, I thought we were saving the world. So I invited homeless people from the streets to our first meeting. And I got taken by the leaders to the outside and said, you see all those people you invited? God isn't ready to save them yet.
They've got no money.
They had no money. They didn't look good for the press, so they very quickly taught me there was a hierarchy. They'll save them later. They first have to save these other people. So,
okay.
So once I got into the camp, they started these lectures. And the reason why I did that quick brainwashing is they began starting to give these lectures and they were for hours long. And the first thing they had to get you to believe is that we need a new truth. So they would talk, and they'd talk about the beauty and nature and how gorgeous it was. And isn't it beautiful? And we need a new truth and the plants grow. And they'd say all these other things. And they threw this word new truth in. And then they break you into groups. So we were in our special group. So Michael and the gal was my shadow were with me. And it was maybe 3 new people and all the rest were group members. And you were in a group of about 16 people, 14 to 16. And you'd go off and they'd have discussion time. And the discussion time went like this. Who's inspired? And so everybody be like, oh, me. And they'd call on a Mooney and they'd go, oh man, it was like, I never heard this before. They've heard it 5,000 times, but that's how they'd start. And there's like beauty and nature and new truth. And everybody go, oh, that's so inspirational. Oh my gosh. And then they'd call on another Mooney and another, and then they call on a new person. So it's me, wow, that was like really cool. And there was nature and a new truth. And that's all I'd say. And they'd go, oh, you're so inspiring. Oh my gosh. Oh, we're so lucky to have you. And then there'd be the skeptical person. What the hell is this about little spirits that hang on your eyeballs? And everybody go, that's covered in the next lecture. Thank you. Like that. Right. And you know right away, I don't want to be one of those people because I get all the attention over here. The other thing is during the lectures, you'd get these notes sent to you. I used to have them till the fire took them. But they were little notes written to me by the members. You're the bestest sister ever. You inspire me. We love you. We can't be without you. You're so important. And so I had all these little notes we called them love bombs. So again, that terminology, love bombing. We played a game after one of the lectures. It was dodgeball, but it was like killer dodgeball. And we do things like we'd scream, bomb with love, bomb with love. And then, things like that. Well, the idea is eventually you're going to have to kill 1/3 of the world's population in order to bring about this world peace. So you're putting into people's head, it's okay to kill if you kill with love. Hence Twin Towers. Those people who flew the Twin Towers in were cult members who believed they were saving the world. We forget that. When we think of it, we just kind of think, but they're brainwashed, just like I was brainwashed. So,
I
could have driven not that I could ever fly. I hate it. I puke. But I could have driven. I would have done. We were trained to kill ourselves rather than leave the group. I was told by leaving the group I was going to bring about World War III. All my family would die and suffer. And so it was better to kill myself than leave the group when we were trained in suicide techniques.
And by this stage, you'd been inculcated with fear, and your mind had been manipulated. It had been really malleable, and you'd got into a mindset. They'd created a mindset.
Yes. And it started with love, beauty, but I told you, there's little subtle things, a bomb with love. And eventually, after the weekend, they got me to stay for another week. And at the end of that week, I had been enough indoctrination going on with these ideas of the world is in threes. There are 3 things in history. It all leads to 1920, that the Messiah would be born in Korea. There's weird quotes out of the Bible. It's very elaborate. I mean, it'd take hours to explain. But eventually I got to the place where I could go to the advanced weekend workshop.
Ooh.
And I went, and Michael was right by my side. And they repeated in that day, that Saturday, they gave an overview of everything we had been learning. And then we had learned that the new Messiah, the Lord of the Second Advent, would suffer greatly, would be persecuted in the papers, he would be born in Korea, and he'd be born in around 1920. So I went to the advanced weekend workshop, and that night, Noah, our lecturer, was sitting on his little chair, and we were all sitting around him. And he goes, I want to tell you, and he'd bring the new truth. And he goes, I want to tell you about the man who brought us this new truth. And I go, new truth? Oh, and I'm like really listening. And he was born in 1920. I bet you guys can't guess where he was born.
Wow.
He was born in Korea. And at that moment I went, God spoke to me. So after I'm jumping up and down I'm sitting on the ground jumping out. I'm just like so excited. I come out of the meeting and I grab Michael and I go, Michael, God spoke to me. And he goes, really? What? And I go, Reverend Moon's the Messiah. And he goes, yes, that happened to me too. And we were crying and it was glorious. I would have had to be pretty dense not to come up with that, you know. But I thought it was this great revelation. And it felt like they had orchestrated this, quote, spiritual experience.
Yes.
And I was hook, line, and sinker in it. Hook, line, and sinker. But I will say there was a piece of me that I kept hidden from the group that said, what if this is all bullshit? Excuse me, Camera John, for the cussing.
Yeah, he doesn't swear at all. He never swears.
It is that skeptic that I have to tell you saved my hiney, but gets me into trouble with any kind of spirituality. I always have that voice that comes up and says, what if it isn't real?
So were you acting? Were you acting this? Did you know that this was happening, or that skeptic, like you say, it sounds like there's a skeptic in you, and I can identify with that. There's a big skeptic in me, but so did you know what was going on?
There was a part of me, there was this little piece that I didn't let anybody into that kept saying, what if this isn't true? But then there was the rest of me that was like, no, shut up. That's evil. That's Satan. See, we were told the skeptic was Satan. Any thought, eventually you get into Satan and God and, you know, moon is Jesus Christ returned to earth. So anything that's against the group is Satan. Anything, any thought. So if you're not enthusiastic every moment of the day, every day, you're satanic. So you can't let Satan get you. Satan's going to get you. If you aren't willing to go out and sell flowers in a dark night at 3 o'clock in the morning in a bad area, you're satanic because you don't want to go. You go anyway. When women are raped, it's because we let Satan in. That's why we were raped, because we let Satan in. So stuff is going on, and you're getting broken. You're getting broken. You're getting shattered. And there was still that peace that lived in me. Anyway,
just what strikes me just listening to you is the vision of this, whoever's come up with this whole inculcation. It sounds like some sort of Stalinist nightmare. You know, it sounds like some dystopian 1984 Orwellian nightmare. I mean, did Reverend Moon come up with this? Do you have any idea about who actually came up with this whole
I can tell you that Mr. Kamiyama, one of his tight people in his group, was part of the Korean CIA. So there's some real shenanigans that go on. Moon believes he's the Messiah. I don't believe he believes he is. It's the people around him with power who are making millions, have access to young, beautiful women, who live like in the lap of luxury. They, I believe, have a con job going. It's the other people who are true believers. You know, people like me are the true believers, but there's a whole group that's getting what they want in life. What got me to leave, I'm going to go to, so eventually I was brainwashed, you know, eventually at a certain level. And I began recruiting, and they found very quickly I was not a great recruiter. I wanted to save the world. So I kept trying to bring people they didn't want in the group. So they decided to put me out as a fundraiser. And there are, throughout the United States, fundraising teams. And we go out and we would go out. I do not belong anymore. We would go out and we'd be out about 20 hours a day selling flowers on the streets. Now, we were told, use anything you can to sell flowers. So we were with a Christian missionary group. We were with an education group. We work with disabled children. And our justification is everybody's disabled. Everybody's a child of God. We had all these justifications. We had a song we used to sing, we are the Moonies, mighty, mighty Moonies. Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are, so we don't tell them. So, and so as a fundraiser, you would go out, you had we had these ceremonies. We get up in the morning, we bow and pledge our blood, sweat, and tears for Moon every day. We had these pledges we had to give, and blood, it means you're going to die for him. And we would bow to his picture and his wife's picture. And we had this whole thing, and then we'd pray. And I grew up praying where you pray quietly. You know, I grew up as a Church of England, Episcopal Church. We pray quietly. They were like, "Oh, I'm so evil, forgive me." And they're screaming, you know, and I'm like, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" You know, I'm a quiet prayer. And then we would go out and we would be dropped off someplace, and you were given an area and you had to meet the van. So the van driver would drop you off, and then you'd have to meet the van at the next location. We lived in the van. We slept in the van. We would go out for hours and hours and hours, and then they'd come collect the money. You had to pledge how much money you were going to get. If you didn't get enough money, you were left out for longer time. So it meant long time, sometimes 24 hours. There were days I went 48 hours with no sleep. We fasted. If you weren't making enough money, you fasted. We did a lot of fasting. I lived on, you know, not a lot of food. Then you couldn't.
You were a slave, Virginia. Basically, you were a slave.
And you couldn't use the money you earned that you got for yourself. It had to be blessed by Reverend Moon. So it had to go back to Moon. So you could have, I'd have $1,500 in my pocket and no food, and I would have to eat out of a dumpster. And so McDonald's, we believe McDonald's was made for Moonies, because you could go in the back of the dumpsters and get meals out of it. People left food, so I ate out of dumpsters. Sometimes I got donations, like I'd go into a place and the people would give me a free pizza. And so everybody had a joke, I must have Italian, and oh, you had these ancestors. So everybody who died before you got in the group, you had to do their sins. You had to pay indemnity for them. You were out working your ass off because you had to raise all of them up. So you're working your ass off. And
it was a pyramid sales scheme, basically. Is that what we're saying here?
Kind of, in a way, only on the people's spirituality. And so my ancestors were supposed to help make the way to anything I did. So they were supposed to make, you know, when I went into a building, I would ask for them to make the way so I could earn lots of money. I sang to people. I did all kinds of crazy things. Well, eventually I started to really doubt. And because I had a long time away from they had to keep reprogramming you to keep you, you know, brainwashed. Well, I'd been out fundraising. I had a friend who had been raped in the group, and they had not been taken care of. And they were being told it was their fault. I mean, things were starting to happen for me. And I started to do things to get rid of my doubts. I took cold showers for a month to, you know, we're talking ice cold showers. I did things. And so finally, eventually I stood on the pavement in Texas, 110-degree weather. So the pavement was really, really hot, hotter than that, in bare feet, because I wanted to get Satan out. Well, I burned my feet, so I had to be taken to the hospital. And they had to put me in a wheelchair. Well, they put me out fundraising in a wheelchair. I made twice the amount of money. So we then began a wheelchair brigade, where we would go out with our wheelchairs. We made more money. People were like, "Oh, well, we know you're a Moonie here. You can have the money because they're taking care of you," you know, kind of thing. You know, it was crazy. It was, and some lady gave me a Bible scripture, and it had a quote in it, and it was different than the quote the Moonies had used. And I was like, oh crap, what, wait, you know, which is true? And so I snuck a phone call to my parents, a pay phone call, and I asked my mom if it was true. And she said, you know, which is true? Which is correct quote? And she said, the one from the little brochure. And it just was one more thing. Then they put me in charge of the books for the state of Texas. We were sending $250,000 a month to Moon every month while our members were living in abject poverty. They wouldn't even buy sunscreen for their face because that was selfish. Oh, anything you did for yourself was selfish. So
what was the, can you just tell me the quote, please, that your mum verified? Do you remember what it was?
With how many years Jacob was gone. It had to do with time. I can't remember the exact quote. I'm old. But it had to do with the amount of time that Jacob was gone, and from the Old Testament. And the Moonies had it was 20 years in the Bible, and Moon quoted it. Everything was numerology in the group, by the way, with the Moonies.
Okay.
So it had to do with times, because you had to have these times to equal the year 1920, right? So, so there was, so at that point, you know, we knew about people being kidnapped from the group and being deprogrammed.
Oh.
It'd been told. There had been some pretty major stuff happen in the Bay Area, and when I had been there, and now I was in Texas. And some friends of mine had tried to convince my parents to have me kidnapped out of the group. And my parents said, we're afraid if you fail, because they had failed on one young woman who sliced her wrists and got out and ended up in a hospital and ended up back in the group. And I was around when that happened. And my parents were afraid if what failed, they'd never, ever hear from me again, because that's what happens. You go underground and nobody ever hears of you again. So my parents had and these friends lived, they were my hippie friends. They lived in Oregon. And so that one night I called them and I said, hey, and I knew in that moment, I was scared. I had this conflict, and they had been told by a deprogrammer what to do if I ever called. And it was give me instructions, because I followed instructions. By then, my brain only knew to follow instructions. And so I said something about, she said, how are you? And the only answer you could have as a Moonie is great, everything's great. I'm great. And she goes, you wouldn't be great if you were calling me. So get on a plane and come see us. And I was like, okay. And I checked with the airlines way too much. I only had $100 petty cash. I was left with petty cash to run I was running the center for the state of Texas at that time in South Lake, Texas. And so I only had $100, and I called, couldn't do that, couldn't do the train. I called Greyhound, and the guy said how much it would be. And then he said, but tomorrow, and I started crying. He goes, ma'am, I'll never forget his ma'am. He goes, tomorrow you can go anywhere for under $100 in the US one way. So I wrote a note saying I was going to Georgia, even though I was going to Oregon, because I knew they'd come after me. I knew way too much. I knew about how they were keeping their books. We're bringing illegal immigrants in across the border in Texas. Not Mexicans, Japanese.
Right.
You match them up with Americans and they can become citizens, Japanese and Koreans. They can become citizens. And if you don't know, after you've been in the Moonies a certain length of time, usually about 5 to 7 years, you get matched by Reverend Moon to someone you've never met. And you get a few, little bit of time to talk to the person, then you come back and either accept them or not. If you don't accept them, you might have to wait years again before you get a match. And this is the culmination of spirituality, is this perfect marriage. And
that was the infamous mass weddings. I remember vividly seeing the mass weddings was of 500,000 people at a time getting wed. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway,
wow.
So at that point, so I said I was going to Georgia. Instead, I took a bus, and I got on the bus and I realized I had failed and I needed to kill myself. And I was crying, and I was sitting next to this man out of Tennessee, he was in his 80s, and he kept patting my leg going, child, he kept calling me child. He goes, nothing's that bad. I've been through a lot. Nothing's that bad. And he just kept patting my leg. And I was sitting in the back of the bus with some woman who was escaping her husband, some guy who I think was escaping the law. I mean, we were kind of the renegades in the back. And I just crying, and I have no money to eat. And this man kept trying to give me food. And I'm just, you know, because I think I'm ending the world. I think I'm going to, you know, bring about World War III. My family's going to die. I'm totally insane at this point. Didn't sleep. Got off the bus in Utah and decided to run in front of a bus. And this 80-year-old man knocked me down. He tackled me, took me down, and he walked me to my next bus. Whatever he told the bus driver, that bus driver put me right next to him on the bus, right behind him, and watched me the whole way till he got me off in Oregon and stood with me till my friends came to pick me up. So they knew I was a nutcase. And so my friends came to get me, and they had no idea what to do with me. I mean, I was really insane at that point. And I had called my parents, and they had said, will you promise to talk to an Episcopal priest? And I said, okay. So I called him, and he said, I can't help you, but I know somebody who can. And at the time, there was a man who lived in Eugene, Oregon, where I was hiding out. And he was, he's no longer, but at the time was a Catholic priest who was involved in understanding about cults. He knew everything about the Moonies. He had all the Moon speeches. He knew about cults. He knew about deprogramming, brainwashing. And he invited me to come, and he came to get me is what he did. All 6'4" of him, big guy, in a little Volkswagen. And the first thing he did is feed me. And he said, okay, so what do you want to eat? Yeah, well, we were having steak. He wanted protein in me. And he asked what kind of salad dressing I want. And I go, or what salad dressing did I, what did I want? Like, what did I like? And I was like, that's evil. I can't like, it's evil. And he goes, okay, calm down, calm down. What do you want? And I go, want is worse than liking. And I'm freaking out in front of the refrigerator. And he finally said, okay, Virginia, breathe. What kind did you eat before the group? And I went, oh, that's easy, blue cheese. And I went, what is wrong with me? I was like, because I could see myself doing all this crazy behavior. Well, we talked for several hours. And finally, I turned to him and I said, I'm ready. Because by then he had shown me enough stuff. I mean, I was like, oh, hell, I was brainwashed. Anyway, I go, I'm ready. And he goes, ready for what? I know you have to torture me to get me out of mind control. So I'm ready for the electrodes. And he goes, you know how they lied to you about everything else? That too is a lie. And I go, really? No electrodes? I don't get electrodes? You know, I got to keep just talking about this stuff. And he goes, yeah. And so it was just a matter of getting the information to me and getting me to stop long enough and to listen and to ask questions and to explore and use my mind again. It was not easy though. I mean, because even going out on the streets, walking past people, you're taught that the root of all evil was the sexual union between Eve and Satan at the Garden of Eden, and that then led to her seducing Adam, poor innocent Adam. So women are the root of evil. And so, I think I've heard that somewhere else. Anyway, and so all of that, and then you walk down the street and you see people looking sexy or whatever, and that's like, evil, freak out, you know. And you know in your mind that it's the programming, but there's still the programming. You haven't gotten your mind back. And 5 years after leaving the group, I said to an ex-member, I'm just not as strong as you. And he goes, why do you say that, Virginia? And I go, well, you had to be kidnapped to get out of the group. I left on my own because, see, to leave was weak, right? And he goes, do you realize that it took way more of having more in you and being a lot stronger to walk out than to be taken. And I was like, oh my God, I'm still brainwashed. You know, it's like even my thinking 5 years later was twisted. So it twists your thinking, it twists everything.
So I know I want to sort of talk briefly about deprogramming, but I just want to jump ahead because this is essentially a 12-step podcast and I want to sort of relate it. So just jumping forward a little bit, and you had, I guess we've spoke before, you had the ism growing up and you've been a seeker and you've had the whatever, the alcoholic gene, or there's been something about you that's wanted more and more and more. It must have been very difficult when you found Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12-step program to be, because did you not, I mean, is AA a cult? Did you see similarities between AA and the Moonies?
I did in the beginning. Okay, so first of all, I don't represent AA. I'm not here as an AA member.
Yep. 12-step.
12-step, I'll just say 12-step, but I'm not an AA member, cannot represent AA. We're an anonymous program, but I did find a 12-step program. When I left the cult, became a hedonist. It was like, screw any religion, screw anything about God. It's all bullshit. It's all a con. And I went full bore into my disease. I already had the disease, but I went full bore into my own disease of alcoholism and drug addiction. In 1980, I was working in mental health. I had stopped, I was not doing deprogramming for a while. I was kind of half doing it, but I was spinning out in 1980. And I was taken to an AA meeting by one of the people I worked with at mental health, because he was a member of a 12-step program. And he took me, to a 12-step meeting. And I walked in and I saw the picture of Dr. Bob and Bill W. and went, oh, hell no, I'm not selling flowers for those two. Forget that crap. And I heard people, and it really makes me upset when people talk about people in 12-step programs being brainwashed. It's not the same. It is not the same. And being brainwashed spiritually rapes people. I was spiritually raped by the Moonies. And so I couldn't stay. I couldn't deal. I could not get past my bias, my prejudice, my fear at that time. And I had to go destroy my life till 1987. And when I came in, I was so desperate. And this time I heard and I listened and I found out about the history and I began to explore, and through really good sponsorship, I was able to find a power greater than myself. For a long time, it was the group, and then I got to know them all too well. And so I had to get something bigger. But it was a slow process for me. And it's been an evolution, even in the group. I was so desperate. And this time I heard. And I'm getting an echo.
No, you're not. Sorry.
Okay. And so this whole thing, so it's been a very slow evolution, but it's been a very gentle, slow growing, and I have to tell you, I'm still always looking to expand my relationship with a power greater than myself. I cannot go for me personally, there's nobody in the sky with a big beard. It's not Reverend Moon. It's not, a dogma and I do not get along. Just saying. Don't do well with dogma.
I wanted to ask you a question. One of the most infamous, obviously, one of the most infamous cult tragedies was the Jonestown massacre. Can you understand why all those people, what happened? Would you have died in that way if you were, if that was made to happen?
Yes, I would have. So after Jonestown, I was in the middle of a deprogramming when it happened. And one of my security team came in and turned on the television with the guy we were deprogramming. And I'm like, what are you doing? You don't turn on TVs in the middle. And they said, just watch. And we had just been talking about how we had been trained to kill ourselves. They turned it on, and he and I both looked at each other, and we were both just like, that could have been us. So after the aftermath, I was asked to speak before the Congress about cults. There was a committee, and Robert Dole put it together. It turned out it was a campaign thing, but I thought he really cared. And so I went before the committee and talked about the experience. But in the process, what I met some of the Jonestown survivors who were not at Jonestown. They were in America of that cult. And so they were just like me. I mean, the difference is, and got to know them and became part of an ex-cult. I'm part of a group of, used to be part of a group of people who were ex-cult members who got some help and some psychological help to get our lives back from Margaret Singer. She was famous in the Patty Hearst trials. And so she was a amazing human being, just helping us find, our stable ground again. And so as a result, some of these people, I got to know them. Unfortunately, two of the people I got close to, their son murdered them because he never was able to be deprogrammed. And that's the thing, how little, so I've deprogrammed people who had children in some of their groups, and those children are brainwashed from birth. And it's a lot harder to help someone. You have to have a foundation to go back to when you get deprogrammed.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that's the thing. You have to be able to have that foundation. If you don't have foundation, then you're.
I want to get onto the deprogramming just in a bit. It also just made me straight that I want to vividly remember the Waco siege. Did you know that was going to happen? Did you instinctively know what was going to happen? I mean, I know there's always been debate on both sides of whether the FBI were heavy-handed or whether they could have just left it alone for a while. But did you know that was going to happen?
Yes. Every cult that exists right now has the potential to drive planes into Twin Towers, to blow up buildings, to shoot people, to every cult does. That's the thing. You're absolutely 100% willing to do anything because every cult demands that you have to be willing to lose your own life for the group. The doctrine becomes more important than the person. Doctrine over person, one of the brainwashing things. And the ultimate is dispensing of human existence. The dispensing of it. There are people who have to die. And your job is to get rid of them. And you know who they are, right? That's dangerous anytime people believe that.
Do these religions, the major religions of the world, do you think that they started off as cults?
Don't know. Wasn't around. I can only talk about modern day cults.
Okay.
I do believe that cults are not hard. There are cults of personality. There are political cults. I've seen those too. I think that anytime you have someone really charismatic and you have a doctrine and you have the right conditions, you can turn it into a cult. A certain cult that I don't say by name because they could have a right to shoot me if I do. Their leader said, if you want to make $1 million, start a religion. And anybody who knows who that is, you can know it. I'm just not going to say.
I'm not afraid to say. I won't say it, but there's a great film, if anyone's ever seen it, called The Master, which starred the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, which I highly recommend because it's almost, I'm assuming, is a blow-by-blow account of how that particular cult started up. So I would highly recommend The Master, Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's a genius film. Deprogramming. So how do you I've come out of a cult. I've done the shop, the go, the stop. I've been brainwashed. and you intervene, you bring me out. How do you deprogram me? Give me a level. And then I also want to talk about, you mentioned about children and how tricky that is. What's the difference and how would you go about that?
Difference. I had to with some little kids that I worked with. They were born out of rape, basically. And yeah, so that's a whole different thing. So your parents have contacted me and they said, you know, we have this adult child who is in a cult. My team used to, we'd research, make sure it was really a cult, you know, wasn't just parents who didn't like their friends, somebody's friends. We would, and usually I got Moonies. Moonies were who, you know, Mooney parents found out about me and came and hired me. And then my team, we would have to find the person. You have to physically get them away from the group. So in the old days, you could get a conservatorship. A parent could go in certain states and get a conservatorship for 30 days on their adult child, where they could physically have them removed legally and held someplace for 30 days. You can't do that anymore. But back in the day, you could. And there are some states you couldn't do it. But you have to physically get the person somewhere safe. You have to get them where they can't harm themselves. So you have to take things like light bulbs out of the bathroom. You can't have windows in the bathroom. You can't have anything they can cut themselves, hurt themselves, hang themselves. You have to have a 24-hour watch on them because they will try and kill themselves. And then it's just sitting down, believe it or not, and talking to people and showing them. And I remember showing them, you'd show them like the information they were told and show them in a history book how it was a lie, right? So they told us these dates. Look, this when these real dates happen. And they'd go, oh, you just had that history book printed to lie to me. And I'm like, look at when it was printed. Look at where it was printed. No, I did not have this. You know, it's just like that. And so it's just a matter of helping. The way I always describe it is you have these thoughts and they're wound like this with the cult thinking. You have to just slowly unwind, giving them information, showing them, you know, what is there, and slowly unwind it. It's just an unwinding. So it's a lot of talking, patience, kindness, getting them to eat, because a lot of times they're food deprived and they're really glad to eat. At first they try not to, but eventually they will, because you try and give them their favorite food. And you just talk to them. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of kindness. It's a lot of understanding. As an ex-cult member, I can tell my story and they know I was there. My first deprogramming, I walked in, I was only 3 weeks out of the cult. And he saw me and thought I was there to rescue him.
Wow.
And I had helped brainwash him. So it was really awesome when he finally, you saw, he wouldn't talk to us at first. And I was a little bit irreverent. You know, everybody else is being really serious. And I walked in and said, if you don't talk to me, I'm going to tickle you. And he goes, this is serious. And as you well know, David, I can talk for hours.
I've heard it said. I've definitely heard it said.
And so it's just, you know, it's just talking, getting them to sleep, getting them to eat, you know, and giving them a chance to have their brains reconnect. And it's amazing. I had a woman, she was jumping up and down on a bed going, Satan, Satan, Satan at me. And then all of a sudden she sat down and looked right at me. And you can see when it happens. When you go into a cult, there's a snapping process where you snap into the mind control. Well, the same snapping happens when they come out. And she looked at me and goes, oh my gosh, I'm brainwashed. Look at how stupid I'm acting. It was like,
wow.
It was amazing. And after that, it was an easy conversation. You know, up until then, there's a lot of discussion and arguing and it goes. And some people.
Yeah, that's fascinating because it sounds like they've created another self. They've created a character, as we talk about in AA, about, you know, the steps in disseminating character and disseminating ego. But it's almost like they've created another consciousness.
Yes.
Right.
Perfect description.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you use fact checking, I guess. It's like fake news. You sort of you're showing facts against fiction, and you're sort of slowly taking that back for those folks. What about these poor kids? How do you do that? That must be a whole new field, I would imagine.
With them, we often bring in like somebody like Margaret when she was alive, like Margaret Singer, somebody who is an expert psychiatrist who knows how to deal with cult members, because they have no beginning foundation, but it starts slowly. I remember these young kids that we were working with, and then we had to get them to somebody with way more help. But we had to get the mother first to leave the group to help bring the children into help. And that it started with, we put on cartoons for them, not realizing they would flip out at cartoons because Mickey Mouse was evil, Donald Duck evil. It was just getting past things like that. So first the parent has to be able to be deprogrammed. And then the parent with the children, they work in a therapeutic setting. So,
wow.
And you have to know that, for quite a while, people are suicidal, from the group, because you're told it's much better to kill yourself than ever leave the group. I was, I was going to be a saint of the new age. Everybody would love me. I was saving all these people. They were all going to thank me someday. If I could even get a penny from someone, I had saved their soul.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you you mentioned before about you had a friend that was raped. Did you ever suffer any kind of sexual harassment or sexual assault while you were in the cult?
I personally did not. I had scary moments. I had moments where it could have happened. I did have some abuse in the cult, physical hitting, slapping, because the leaders could do anything they wanted to you. If they were hitting you, if they were slapping you, if they were harming you in any way, it was because they were getting rid of Satan. So I was beaten several times. I knew enough to keep my head down and be a good Moonie to be able to get the adoration and rise in the group. I'm not stupid. So I very quickly found if you're a real good Moonie, you get better jobs, you get better things to do, you get praise all the time. So
now I know that I'll just touch on this briefly. They made a movie about Anne, or Anne was involved in a movie and some of her experiences in deprogramming, and it's like the link's actually there in the chat if you want to go. The movie's called Ticket to Heaven, and I believe they changed your character to a man. So you're not actually mentioned, but that too bad. But I'm sure it is a great film. I just want to go back because it is about the 12-step program. We do sort of look at things from a 12-step point of view. It must have been a hell of a thing for you to find some kind of step 3, step 7, step 11. I mean, how did you must have been so tainted and clouded by your experiences with any kind of spirituality, no less religion or dogma, like you said. But how did you do that? Did you have to go back to your experiences in the 60s, or how did that? Must have been torture. I'd love to hear it.
For me, step 3 was easy, is in the sense that I just made the group for a while my higher power, for a while. Again, personalities started coming out, and then I was like, oh, hell no. I was desperate. In 1987, when I came in, I was desperate. I was willing. There was nothing left. I mean, I knew I couldn't keep going the way I was going, Well, I was suicidal at that point. I was trying to decide whether to drive into a pillar. But for me, 6 and 7 wasn't hard, because by the time I got to 6, I had done 4 and 5. So, it was progressive. It took me a year and a half to do my 5th step, just saying. I
Wow.
sat on the 4-step for a long time. And then I got this amazing sponsor at a year sober. I moved at a year sober, and I got the most incredible sponsor who patiently dealt with my crazy. And I have to tell you, you know, every week I had a different cause, a different higher power, a different thing I was going to do. I was very all over the page. For me, I'm a slow grower. And I'd say for probably the first 10 years of sobriety, I tried to grapple with peace with a higher power. So maybe even longer. And now I can do it because I know how do I describe it? I know now for today, I found that place. It's a place that I had to go to inside myself where I found that peace and I found the connection. And I don't have a name for it. I can't describe it to any of you. I can only tell you the results. And that's that I'm still sober today, that that there's this thing I experience when I stand on a mountain and I look and I see it in color and I see a sunset reflect against the snow at Mount Lassen, that moment that I had, that moment of awe. And it's in that moment of awe that I touch whatever that is. It's that moment of awe. And when I have that, I know.
You've gazumped me a little bit there, but that's the question we ask every guest that we have on here. Before I move to there's quite a few questions in the audience. Sorry?
No, I am not enlightened.
No. I know that. Don't worry about it. I know. What's God? Who is God? What is this God thing? Your understanding, what is it?
I won't define it for anyone. That's each person defined for themselves. For me, it's that awe that I can only experience and will not explain.
Is there divine? Is there a divine creator? Is there an agenda? Is there a plan?
Not for me to define for anyone else.
Is there a supernatural force that looks over us?
Not for me to define for anyone else. It says God as we understand God. You know, that's for each person to define for themselves. That's their journey. That's their exploration. The one thing I will not do is tell someone how to walk up their mountain, and don't tell me how. Because I had somebody forcing me to walk up a certain part and it wasn't the right part of the mountain. And so I will never do that for another person if I can help it.
I don't think you were climbing up a mountain. I think you were going down a valley.
Yeah, I was going down a valley.
Yeah.
Actually, I was going in a hole, to tell you the truth.
Right. So just before we crack on, I just wanted to say that there's Will Klein is in the audience. Now, Will is a filmmaker. I think he's an Aussie, actually. We're looking at his phone number, but he's got a documentary that's out at the moment called Children of the Moon, which is playing in film festivals around the US. And he's put the link in the chat. It's on Vimeo, and it's just for everyone. Just check it out. Thanks for coming along, Will. So it's in there in chat, and check it out. And it's doing a lot of film festival stuff around the US. So go and check it out. Good luck with that, Will. Hang on, we'll have a chat later on. So I'm going to Joe C's here, and I know Joe C's a regular contributor here, and Joe is one of our favourite panelists. Joe, you've got a question, I think, haven't you? I'm asking you to unmute.
Yes, by all means. Thanks very much, Virginia. Really, really enjoyed what you had to share. And, like I've explored a lot of the writings on is AA or how is AA cult-like, and there's certainly the haters out there, the orange paper type of thing. I think the best definition I've heard is a benign cult. Which isn't too bad, but it's really I want to ask you about, in comparing the two experiences, it's not in attending AA, that you get the positive outcome rates. It's about engaging in AA that you get the positive outcome rates. It's the indoctrinators. We call them sponsors or people who take the meetings, the treatment center, in telling someone how much better AA is than my drinking life. I'm dispelling my own ambivalence, and I'm becoming more indoctrinated in, sobriety living or AA philosophy. And do you see that in AA in a comparative way? And where is the line? Because AA does have some culty type of meetings and some culty type of people for sure. But where do you find where people are maybe over the line, or whether it's a perfectly healthy sort of mutual aid kind of approach to things?
When we start taking one member and putting them over everyone else, like somehow they have the magic bullet, the magic wand, the magic something, I think it becomes the cult of personality, and that we're all supposed to be in 12-step programs. We're all supposed to be equal. Part of that anonymity is also, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter if you're a bricklayer, doesn't matter if you're a PhD in clinical psychology, it doesn't matter, if you're the Dalai Lama, if you've come into AA, we're all equal, that thing. And I think it's really dangerous. I see it happen a lot where the cult of personality takes over. Everybody goes and they follow that person and they show up at those meetings and they, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. But that's just human beings. We find something we like and we want, and especially people who have addictions, we find something we like and we want a whole lot more of it, like more and more and more and more. So if somebody's really good, everybody goes, oh, have you heard this? Oh, we got it, and we create that. Where it's dangerous is if that person decides they can tell other people how to think, how to believe, My sponsors always taught me it's my higher power. I have to find my own higher power, and there's ways I can go about having that happen, but I had to learn how to live again. I had to learn how to, anything can become a cult, but what I've seen, my experience in the years I've been around, is I've seen cults of personality, not a cult. There's a difference. That's something I think we all have to watch out for. So, yeah.
Thanks, Joe. It's great having you along here. I think Anne. Oh, sorry, go on.
I do want to recommend. There's a book called Moonwebs that was written in Canada, and it was written by Josh Freed, and it was the book that the movie that Anne recommended was based off of. And in there, you'll hear him describe me as Virginia. A verve of a chipmunk and the smile of an angel is how he described me, because I talk a lot. Okay.
Do you?
Yeah,
really? Now, co-panelist Anne, the mighty Anne Kay, who does a lot of the running around for this podcast. Anne, I think you've got a question.
Yeah, I was going to come in. Thank you so much, Virginia. Wow, what a great episode. Man, there but for the grace of God, right? And I just want you to correct me where I'm wrong, but you see, I know that had the opportunity been there, I was ripe for the picking, because I tried everything for relief from this personality. Right. And I think that's what cults do, is they give you this freedom from personality. And while we gain freedom in a 12-step program, how can you go over the differences? You touched on it a little bit, but I'd like you to speak to that directly.
So you said it so well, is that what was me, I didn't want to have to make decisions anymore. That I was in a 22. I'd made a bunch of mistakes at 22. And they came along and said, you never have to make another decision again. We'll make all your decisions. We'll decide everything you're going to do, how you're going to think, when you're going to get up, when you're going to sleep, when you're going to eat. And you just have to go out and save the world. To me, that seemed like a great deal. And I remember telling one of my best friends, I was trying to get her in the group. I said, hey, guess what? I never have to make another decision again in my life. And she just went, oh my God. Like she freaked out because she was like, do you understand what you're saying? And I was like, isn't it great? And she was like, oh no. Then she knew I was pretty gone. Difference. AA is like, no, you got a lot of decisions you have to make. You have to go out and put on your big girl panties and start living, you know, but you have to live in this world how it is, not how you want it to be. Don't get to hide and make up what it is, which I did for years. You know, I lived in a false reality. There's so many differences. One thing is I'm not out there to dispense the end of other people. I don't have the right to tell somebody who drinks that they have to come join AA and can't keep drinking. You have to do whatever you need to do. You know, I'm not working towards the end of ultimate, you know, everyone in the world will be an AA member. You know, sorry, I shouldn't be using AA.
12-step.
12-step. Please forgive me. I don't want to break AA's traditions. Anyway, it's very different. It's very different. And I think that you hit it, is that I'm developing who I am as a person, not trying to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks very much. So we're sort of getting into the last sort of 10 or so minutes here. It's been a bit of an extended version tonight or today. Margot, I think you might know her. Margot asks, are there elements of the 12-step program that have helped you with your healing from the Moonies?
Oh yeah. My big one was my 4th step, 4th and 5th step. And then for me, 11 has been really healing, very healing for me. Those were the major ones, I would say, because 6 and 7 too. 6 and 7. Yeah.
Or just 1 to 12, let's just say, yeah. So Jeb, our friendly free thinker in Aurora, asks, did you find what Bill called the great reality deep within, or an unsuspected inner resource?
Yes.
That's the shortest answer you've ever given me in anything. Yes. Wow. Fantastic. Thanks very much. Just going to go through, got a few more questions here, I think. Neil in Burlington says he was involved with the Children of God. So yeah, he's here. I'm sure there'll be a bit of a Q&A after. I'll leave the room open afterwards for people to have a chat if they want to ask you some questions. And there was one here, I think we've already answered it, from our friend with the umbrella. Says, how can I tell if a recovery meeting on Zoom is a cult? With all the deceptions that can come with the tools of the internet, digital harassment, and the ability to record anonymous members without their consent, the particular group in question has an internal circle where decisions are made without a group conscience. The spirit of rotation of trusted servants is never followed, etc. So the laws regarding such how do we as AA or NA or any 12-step survive the acid test of technology and overcome such issues to zoom forth into the 5th dimension?
I think that's really important, is you have to make sure that you have a service structure in place that follows the service structure out of the general service office, you know, whatever one that is for whichever group you're involved in. And that includes spirit of rotation, group conscience, all of that. So I think, and for me, if there's a group that isn't following it, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't support it, especially if it's giving money that's going to somebody's pocket. I mean, things like that. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, next week on Here's Tom with the Weather on Friday, we've got Ade Richardson, who's out of New York, and he holds regular satsangs. He's a great guy. He's been sober a long time as well, without a drug or a drink for a long time, and he's going to be talking on Step 11 and his spirituality. He's a really great guy, is Ade. And I was just going to ask John, the camera there, if he's got a question or if there's anything he'd like to say. I know he shook shot because I know you enjoyed seeing John's interview. John, we've got an interview with John on Here's Tom with the Weather that's on the YouTube channel, so I don't know if he wants to ask you a question. John?
Well, I'd just like to comment. I tried to join the Church of God in the 1960s because they offered unlimited sex if you joined them, but I could never find them. So it was, I joined the Guru Maharaji Divine Light Mission, which I think was celibate, unfortunately. But you used a word there. I think you used the word kindness. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that his religion can be defined in one word, kindness. And you use that. And I think a lot of people around that age, when you're on the search, you're taken advantage of because you're a kind person. Most of the people that I meet up in Alcoholics Anonymous and various on a spiritual path, they're all kind and courteous people, which I think you are, Victoria. And most of the people that I hang about with in AA, so it's sort of like as if we're preyed on because of we're kind and courteous. I always thought we were naive, but I prefer to think kind and courteous. So thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that I never bumped into the Church of God or the Moonies. So thank you so much, Veronica. Victoria. Is it Veronica? Virginia, sorry. Yes, thank you so much.
Cheers, John.
I do have to say, John, I will add this. I always complained after I left the Moonies that I picked a celibate cult.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you.
Cheers, John. So so we'll have a few questions after if you can hang around, but I'm going to ask you the final question as we always do, and I know you know what this question is, but let's go through the routine. So Virginia's luck has changed. Unbelievable. She's had some really good luck. She's been a successful school teacher. She's done a lot of amazing things. She survived this cult, and God or whatever it is, has looked upon you favorably and has granted you, and you've won the lottery. You've won you've won $1 billion, and you've decided with all your millions going to go on this massive long holiday. You bought a super yacht, and so you and all your friends and all your books and all your possessions, you chuck on this massive super yacht, and you set sail from the California coast, and you're off into the South Pacific, just sunning yourself on deck and having a real good time. Lots of dancing. Lots of talking, lots of party going, lots of sober party going. Anyway, but unfortunately, somewhere off the coast of Fiji, you strike a submerged reef and the super yacht starts to sink. And you've only got a matter of minutes for all your mates to jump overboard, swim to a local island to await rescue, but you're the last one on deck. And you think, I've got to get a book. So you run inside, you grab a plastic bag, you grab a book off the bookcase, you come back over the deck, dive overboard, and swim to shore. You've got this one book to keep you company. What's the book? Who's it by and why?
Forgot this was the question you were going to ask. It would most likely be my big book. Though I have to say, when I was in the wildfire, I did not grab my big book and I lost it in the fire. I grabbed my cats and I grabbed my students' essays. So when you're talking about a situation, I thought of other people before I thought of myself. So I didn't even grab anything that was mine. I got my cats because I love them. They're my children. And I grabbed my students' essays because I didn't want them to burn because they were going to college and they were their college essays. So I don't think I usually think of myself first. And so I would probably grab somebody else's most treasured possession to bring the real truth of who I am.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure we'll have a chat about that afterwards. So thank you very much. And thanks very much to my team behind Anne Kay I know Kaiser and Lebowski aren't here today, but it's great to have them around. But Anne, Kay, thanks for all your help. Virginia, thank you so much for coming along. This has been an extraordinary episode of Here's Tom with the Weather. We're going to be back on Friday, next Friday, so please come back. We ask all the tough questions. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. There is a PayPal account that we use to keep this Zoom. It doesn't go to us. It goes to keeping this Zoom account going and keeping it afloat. But thank you very much, Virginia, and I will stop recording now. Thanks very much, everyone.